The divorce rate in America is almost 50%, so you can expect that about 1 in every 2 marriages might end in divorce or separation. There's some good news for you though. Today we have some advice, and we are joined by the expert with Murphy Desmond. We've got a family law attorney, it's Sarah DeKraay, who is joining us on our program to talk us through some of these difficult tasks that we're navigating during these tough times. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
So this is a pretty big topic we're going to tackle and sort of unpack some of the details of divorce and what you can expect afterwards. So individuals who are divorced are really essentially starting a new chapter in their lives. And I want to talk a little bit about what you can advise your clients after the divorce, especially those who may have children in the picture.
Yes, sure. Well, the first piece of advice that I have is that you need to update your will and your estate plan. You need to update the beneficiaries on all of your retirement accounts, your life insurance policies, and your financial accounts. Then what you need to do is you need to remove your former spouse's name from all of the deeds to any residences you may have, or titles to vehicles, or any joint credit cards. You need to also remove your former spouse's name from any financial accounts.
So lots of things to consider, and important things really to make sure that you have taken care of. Now, speaking of those families that do have children in the picture, there's some circumstances to be thinking about, because what can happen after time has passed post-divorce, there can be a change in circumstances that might require a modification to the original divorce agreement. So I want to talk a little bit about that and what kinds of changes you deal with regularly.
Sure. Well, a lot of times after a divorce, parties will move. So individuals will move to a different location. And then suddenly the placement agreement that was in place at the time of the divorce is no longer applicable. For instance, a placement arrangement where you have placement on a Monday, Tuesday, or every other weekend, suddenly because you're so far apart from one another, the transportation isn't able to work. So in situations like that, people come back to see me to revise the placement agreement in a divorce. Now, what happens under Wisconsin law is you have to wait for 2 years before you can modify any type of placement or custody arrangement. And another situation is if once the children get older, their schedules are going to get changed. They're going to get involved in more extracurricular activities. They're going to get involved in camps, music lessons. So that also calls for a change in the placement agreement.
Sure, lots obviously changes over time, especially when you're talking about growing children and changing family needs. Another thing to take into consideration, of course, is financial situations. So those, of course, can change over time as well. So let's talk a little bit about financial issues that you might be able to help our viewers with following a divorce.
Well, sure. Sorry to interrupt, but so oftentimes there's an income change. So if there's a job loss, and anything like that, then that's going to trigger a change in the amount of child support that's paid or the amount of child support that's received. And the rule of thumb is if that change of income is more than 15%, then you should get back to court right away and change the amount of child support or maintenance that you're paying or receiving. And it's important to get on that right away, because it does take a while to get back into the court.
And one of the things, of course, the goal of having a court involved and using attorneys is so that you can come to agreements that are, in the end, court ordered, and both parties should be following. That being said, however, what happens if one of the parties is not following those court ordered agreements? Then what do you do?
Yes, that's a real problem. So you could be held in contempt of court if the court finds that there's an intentional and willful violation of a court order. So anytime that somebody's not following a court order, such as maybe they don't pay child support, or maybe they're not paying their variable expenses, or they didn't refinance the residence, then a motion could be brought and they could be held in contempt of court. And if they are, they could be sentenced to jail. So the court order needs to be followed at all times.
Okay, so let's talk quickly before we head to break about if there's a viewer that's watching, a parent that's watching, what should they do if they need to make modifications to their current agreements?
Well, I always advise to contact an attorney right away. The family law team that we have here at Murphy Desmond is extremely well versed in this area of the law. And we know how to navigate the court system. We know which motions to draft. We know what to say when we get into court, and it becomes a much more efficient process if you contact somebody over here at Murphy Desmond.
Absolutely. Well, it's always important to enlist the help of an expert, and of course the folks at Murphy Desmond can help you do that. Sarah DeKraay, thank you so much for joining us and helping us unpack this difficult topic.
Well, thank you for having me.
You bet. I'm Jessa Jeremiah. We have more coming up next after this break.